Hi, Virginia.
Hi there. How are you?
This is Pam here.
Hey, Pam. Oh, it's great to see you. Or I don't
Same,
see you
same
yet.
here. Same here. Can you see me?
I can now.
So
Hi,
nice.
Hello, ladies.
Yeah. Hi. Hi,
Hi,
dear.
everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Women.
South Africa. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to those of us from across the globe, from across the African continent and the diaspora. We are so excited to have you during South Africa's Women20 South Africa 2025 launch. Indeed, today is a mammoth huge day for the women of the South, women of Africa and women of South Africa. And it's a special day because this day is the beginning, indeed, of a launch of the 10th Women20 since 2015 when we launched in Turkey. My name is Sibulele Nomahlubi Phoswayo. Ndingumahadebe ndingundlebe entle ezombini ubhungana umafuza fula lokwekhwitsha lemvolo undlebe entle ezombini umputo oncinci sifuna ukwangiwa siyachamakusha You are indeed welcomed to South Africa, to Women20 South Africa, and in the essence of Ubuntu, which is the value, the essence of who we are as Women20 South Africa, where we say, Umtu ngumtu ngabantu, you are because I am, and I am because you are. We welcome you today. And I would like to inform you that I will be steering the program on very swiftly today. We have a wealthy, very rich program, a 1.5 hour program. I know some of my sisters, part of the delegates of Women20, it's probably 3 a.m. in your country. Some are 1:30 in the morning. We give thanks that you could join us for this beautiful day. And without further ado, we'd like to welcome our distinguished guest, the Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, Mamuletsi, the Deputy Minister, Mapaseka Steve Letsika. We call her Stivovo. She's been with us in the trenches for years as part of civil society. You are most welcome, Deputy Minister. We're honored to have you here, Stivovo. It is a beautiful time, and a beautiful time indeed, that this is the first Women20 on African soil, and it will be keynote by yourself. And as we continue to greet our dignitaries, I would like to welcome further the CEO of the HSRC, Professor Sarah Musetsa. I'd like to welcome the chairperson of the Inequality Movement. I'd like to welcome Dr. Mamuletsi Musai, the CEO of the NRF, and our kind host for this launch. Co-chair at Women20 South Africa. We are live, and we have online the CEO of Brand South Africa. We'd like to welcome all of you. We welcome our delegates. We welcome all our sponsors and funders. And without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Professor Nanya Bola-Miller to do the opening remarks. Thank you, Nanya. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sibulele. Deputy Minister, colleagues and friends, all protocol observed. Good afternoon, Molweni, Dumelang, Sanibona, Unjani, Goeiedag, Heta. Welcome. It's an honor to stand before you today to address the significance of South Africa leading Women20. This momentous occasion marks a pivotal chapter in our continued and sometimes arduous and in fact perilous journey towards gender equality and women's economic empowerment. South Africa's leadership of the W20 is not just a symbolic gesture. It is a testament to our commitment to enhancing the rights and opportunities of women and girls in all their diversity and all vulnerable groups across the world. South Africa has a lot to offer the world. Besides the beauty of our country and the hospitality of our people, we are also a strong constitutional democracy. I would like to read for you from the preamble of our Constitution of 1996. We recognize the injustices of the past and honor those who fought for justice and freedom. We believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, and we adopt the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. We aim to heal divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. In building a united and democratic South Africa, we aim to improve the quality of life of all citizens. This preamble reflects who we are as South Africa, who we are as a nation, and who we are on the global stage. As the first African country and the fourth in the global south to hold this prestigious position, we have a unique opportunity to amplify the voices of women and girls from diverse backgrounds on the continent in the global south. And that is something that South Africa is unashamedly going to do during this presidency. Women20's mission is to promote gender-inclusive economic growth, which is, of course, the mission of G20, and advocate for policies to empower women economically, socially, and politically. Under South Africa's leadership, we plan to drive forward initiatives that address the systemic barriers that women face, such as unequal pay for unequal work, limited access to education and healthcare, and disproportionate burden of care that women hold. By investing in women's financial inclusion, we can unlock their potential and contribute to sustainable development. Studies have shown that where women thrive, the economy also thrives. Moreover, South Africa's leadership in the W20 provides a platform to address pressing global challenges, such as gender-based violence and femicide, climate change, food and water security, and digital inclusion. It is crucial that women's perspectives and voices are heard in the policy-making process and in the decision-making process. They need to be at the table. By championing gender-responsive policies with our allies across the world, we can create a more equitable and resilient world for the future, for our children. By breaking down barriers and creating pathways for women to lead, we can build more inclusive and representative institutions. As we embark on this journey, we should remember the words of our late President Nelson Mandela, who said, "Freedom cannot be achieved unless women have been emancipated from all forms of oppression." We cannot do this alone. We rely on a multilateral system that works, ! And supporters and sponsors across the globe. The program, which is admittedly very full, as Sibulele has pointed out, aims at reflecting the diversity of voices within W20. And as I'm looking here at the audience, it reflects the diversity of our country. Unfortunately, all voices could not be included today. I'd like to specifically thank my co-chair, Ms. Sibulele Pozwayo from the Inequality Movement, for hosting the program management today. I want to welcome the delegates, South African delegates who are in the room. I haven't had a chance to meet everybody yet. Delegates who volunteer to do this work. In other words, they donate their precious time for free for this endeavor to work. I would like to thank our funders, German Development Agency GIZ and Canadian Development Agency IDRC, for seeing value in the work that we want to do. I also want to personally thank the Human Sciences Research Council and our CEO, Prof. Sarah Motswetsa, for supporting us. South Africa's leadership in W20 is a historical opportunity to drive meaningful change. Let us seize this moment to build a more just and equitable world for all, leaving no one behind. We hope to see you later in the year for our inception meeting and our summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. My sister, my friend, our African queen who continues to be selfless in leading us in Women20 South Africa. 2025 indeed is going to be an amazing year where delegates from across the G20+1, as the AU is the new kid on the block in the G20, as the delegates and women from all walks of life will provide recommendations that we will ensure as the leadership of Women20 South Africa will find expression in the leaders' declarations firstly, but most importantly for us it is how the nuanced recommendations find expression in implementable policies. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the HSRC head and also the CEO of NRF to come to the stage and give us welcoming remarks. Sarah.
You will get me fired. I am actually the managing director of NRF SASTA, which is a business unit within NRF. My name is Mamweletse Musia. It is indeed a great pleasure for us as the organization to be hosting this prestigious event, and I'd like to acknowledge the distinguished guests that are in our midst today. DM, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. And esteemed colleagues and delegates, I do hope that today is going to be a fruitful engagement as we'll be listening to the conversations. We are honored indeed to host this gathering where we join hands with the women in the spirit of solidarity to drive sustainable socio-economic development. The theme of today's gathering, Women in Solidarity Towards Sustainable Socio-Economic Development, resonates very well with the organization and the work that we are doing in advancing socio-economic development. As an institution, we are dedicated to advancing knowledge, research, and innovation, and we recognize that sustainable development cannot be fully realized without gender inclusivity. And ensuring strategies that empower women in research and technology and socioeconomic development is one of the things that we drive as an organization. We champion several initiatives that align with the objectives of W20. Through our support of women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, we are breaking barriers and ensuring that women are not only participants, but are also leaders in research and innovation. I'll just give you an example of some of the stats that shows the commitment of the organization in ensuring the advancement of women. If you look at the support that we are providing, of the postgraduate students that we are funding, 61% of them are women. And in terms of the researchers in general, 45% of the funded researchers are women. As I pause and I acknowledge our former Deputy President, Mamngoka, we are very honored to have you in our presence today. In addition, 35% of our rated researchers are women, and last year, so these stats are actually based on the last financial year, we provided grants for the National Equipment Program to about 23 recipients, and of those, 10 of them were women. Lastly, 25% of our centers of excellence directors are women. That is such a very small number. However, if we flip and look at the South African chairs initiatives, the holders there, 51% of them are women. I'm talking about these numbers, and I'm giving you these numbers because if we had had this conversation 10 years ago, and we are looking at the statistics of the recipients or the support that we are providing as an organization, these numbers would have actually been very shocking because the number of women was generally very low. But now it's showing the commitment of the organization to ensure that we advance the development of women, and we ensure that women's voices are heard as we do research and we're doing technology development. Essentially, we are saying for women, nothing for us without us, and the organization is really buying into that. The one component of the work that we do is providing research grants, but the other component of the work that we do is ensuring that the research that is done is also advancing both the the advancement of women, and also sustainable development goals, and also socio-economic development. So when we look at the proposals that we receive, we ensure that they align with our strategies generally. So we're very excited. And as I conclude, as we gather today, let us use this platform to strengthen our networks. Look at the number of females that are here that are doing groundbreaking work, that are advancing the directives, the work of women. Let us make sure that you get one new name that you've never interacted with. But it's beyond networking. It's for us to share insights and to advance actionable strategies that will accelerate gender equity and women's economic empowerment. The W20 serves as a crucial voice in ensuring that policies and initiatives reflect the needs and potential of women across all sectors. And I have no doubt that today's discussions will yield impactful outcomes. On behalf of the NRF, I extend my gratitude to the organizers for choosing us to be the host of this conversation, the speakers today, and all participants for your unwavering commitment to this cause. May this meeting be a catalyst for meaningful collaborations and transformative change. Welcome, and let's embark on this important journey together. Thank you.
When you prepare opening remarks, you are not expecting the former deputy president of the country to be in the room. You now start scrambling for notes. Like, is my pitch going to be okay? Am I okay? Knowing that our deputy minister is in the room, but I'm very familiar with how you do protocol, as people were calling you Steve Vovo. I then did my opening remarks knowing that protocol for you is an unnecessary. That whenever I've seen you engage with civil society and with an ordinary person of South Africa and the world, that yours is always based on humanity, that we are all equal. To the former deputy president of the country and the DM, you are welcome here, and thank you for being here. You could have been in many parts of the world, and you decided to join us here. To be honest, I wanted to start by saying greetings and allow me to not follow protocol and really thank the head of delegation and the chairperson today as well, Nanya, and is it Mamkhadebe or Makhadebe? Makhadebe. So much for the work. I do appreciate. I think it makes some of our work just largely ceremonial. Thank you very much for all the work. I was sitting there when I was watching the screen. It said greetings from Harare, greetings from Malawi, greetings from Italy, greetings from Rome, greetings from KZN. Let me first acknowledge everyone who's joining us from afar online. Thank you very much for being here, and for everyone who've made the time to also be in this room. There are many people that I have to acknowledge, but I know that we don't have time, and I think that Nania has also done a great job in acknowledging everyone. This is indeed a community, and we need to respect that. It's an inaugural W20 meeting in South Africa, held under the auspices of the South African G20 presidency, a presidency rooted in the principles of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. And I want to highlight solidarity, given the history of this country where we come from with international solidarity and the many challenges that we are confronting as a country is just based on that one principle of international solidarity. This gathering marks a pivotal moment for South Africa, the African continent, the broader global south, as we collectively work towards building a more inclusive and equitable world. The Women20 W20, for those who don't know, is Women20. It's an engagement group that has become a powerful platform for driving global advocacy on gender equality and ensuring that women's voices and perspectives shape the G20 social and economic agenda. As South Africa assumes this presidency from Brazil, from Indonesia, from India, and the fantastic work that Brazil did last year, as the fourth global South nation, we are reminded of the urgent need to use this platform to amplify the voices of African women. But I also want to highlight not just African women, rural women, and women of the global South. The topics, as Nania has clearly articulated them, digital divide, women in STEM, gender-based violence and food security and climate change, reflect the intersecting barriers that prevent women, particularly those in marginalized communities, from reaching their full potential. I want to come back to the issue around rural women, because most of us, as we engage on women issues, we leave some of our other women behind. Rural women, as all of us know, make up a significant proportion of women in Africa across the global south, and they are often the backbone of our communities, yet remain invisible in policy dialogues and underrepresented in economic decision-making spaces. They bear the brunt of poverty, of food insecurity, and impact on climate change. I want to suggest that as we move towards W20 South Africa and the summit in October, culminating in the handover of the consensus document, we must ensure that outcomes of this process do more than just highlight the problem. They have to propel us into action moving forward. Finally, we are remiss of me not to talk about HSRC. As HSRC, we are here, we are committed, working with our partners, NRF and many others who are here, to ensure that all of the recommendations that we are going to be making are evidence-led, research evidence-led. Indeed, I wish all of us success during this year, and thank you so much for being here.
It is indeed a new world where Africa is no longer a dependent world, but a force to be reckoned with. And as you can see, women are at the forefront of leadership of where we are going. And so before we are blessed to have the Deputy Minister give us a keynote address, we work with partners. Women20 South Africa is part of a sisterhood, a strong sisterhood that has been in the making for 10 years. And this year is the 10th year that we are in existence as Women20. We have our troika. Troika in Women20 is made up of the presidencies of the year before, during the year of the present presidency, and the forthcoming. And so we'll now have messages of support, firstly from Troika, from Adriana in Brazil, from Ann Benton in the USA, and Victoria Littleton as well in the USA. And we're excited because they have been trained to provide 2-minute renditions of support. So please, sisters, I'm trusting you. This is what we've been doing for the past 10 years for each other. And in addition to those support, we'll have support from the International Development Center as well, and we'll have also from Florence Msundwana and Business 20 Task Force, Think Tank Mr. Pilani Mtembu, Youth 20 Raymond Matlala, and Miss Nicole Duplessis from Oceans 20. Kindly, for those of you that are in person, make your way to the lectures, and please let's take over online to share our messages of support from our colleagues across the globe. Can we flight the messages of support from Adrian in Brazil, colleagues at the back? Perhaps in the meantime, while you're getting ready, we could have...
Okay.
Thank you.
He's like trying to remember which one is this one. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, DM and our our ex-deputy president. I acknowledge everybody. You know when you were coming and you're thinking about what it is that you're going to say, and you have to seize the moment, and I'm like trying to align my thoughts. But my name is Florence Msundwa, and I have the privilege of having journeyed first from Women20 to now becoming the South African representative for the G20 Empower. G20 Empower is about women economic representation in the private sector. Our chairperson is Menon Tlantla Mjoli Ngube. I'm here also with one of our delegation. But in short, I'm here to say you've got our full support. I believe the work of whether the Women20 or the G20 Empower is imperative to make sure that the voices of women across all strata of society, it is heard. I think it is a very unique opportunity we find ourselves as we becoming the voice not only of South Africa, but of Africa. And that it is a responsibility that I want you to know from us to you as Women20, you've got our full support. Where there is synergy, we will work hard and we'll show the world the only way South African women can do it, right? Yeah. And we'll put our mark not only as South Africans, but also as Africa. The time is now. I believe most of us know or have seen that T-shirt that says, Africa, your time is now. Africa, your time is now. Thank you.
Am I good to go or not? Okay.
You are good to go, Adriana?
Thank you. So, I'll start. Dear W20 sisters, leaders, and advocates for gender equality, it's a great honor to be here today. I begin by expressing my best wishes for a success to South Africa delegation and reiterate W20 Brazil's support and commitment as part of the current Troika. The handover has gone smoothly. We are pleased to see the continued progress in 5 thematic areas of our presidency: entrepreneurship, care economy, women in STEM, ending violence against women and girls, climate justice. Additionally, we welcome the inclusion of 2 new teams, women's health and rural women. We are also acknowledge South Africa's commitment to carrying forward some of key legacies which I will point out. The implementation of a knowledge platform in 2024 was a joint decision of the current Troika and it was funded by the Brazilian president in its first year. The platform is key to ensuring continuity and efficiency. Monitoring and discussing progress is essential for what we do. For the first time, our summit includes a dedicated session to review indicators, and we publish a consolidated report with that. The Brisbane goal set by the G20 in 2014 in Australia aims for 25% reduction in the gender labor gap. However, data shows that only half of the G20 members are on track. The W20 Brazil Recommendations on Practice and Actions report is designed to drive concrete actions forward. Our strong collaboration with other engagement groups has led to significant outcomes, including a joint statement on artificial intelligence and a unified, powered voice advocating for gender equality. South Africa is the fourth country from the Global South to lead the G20, and we trust South Africa to continue to incorporate this perspective in addressing the important challenge ahead. I conclude my speech here by recognizing all people, especially women, who had fought for our rights, all of us who are fighting today, and all the future generations that will continue this journey, and I hope a much easier journey. It is past time for a better world. Women's rights are human rights. Gender equality is not only the right thing to do, but is also a key strategy for building a prosperous, sustainable, and peaceful world. Ubuntu to all of us.
Thank you so much for an amazing message of support, Adriana.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Sibelele. Greetings to my sisters and brothers in support of the W20. My name is Ann Simmons Benton, and I'm the co-head of the U.S. delegation. I am delighted to be here to participate in the launch of the W20 for the South African presidency, and particularly to embrace the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. South Africa's history includes tragedy, divisiveness, and inequality. But this history gives South Africa a keen understanding of the path forward. And South Africa has already given the world powerful examples of reconciliation, restorative justice, dedication to equality, and hope. This history provides the needed background and leadership to pursue the agenda for the W20 in the upcoming year. We need South Africa's leadership at this time. The leaders of the W20 that you have chosen, Narnia and Sibelele, are powerful women who we at the W20 have worked with in the past. They are our sisters, and we are proud to follow their lead and support them during the South African presidency. We also embrace, as Adriana mentioned, the task team topics that are chosen, and we look forward to working with those who are leading the task teams. Additionally, we are looking forward to South Africa's leadership at the United Nations in March at the Commission on the Status of Women. There will be an event on the role of the W20 in the context of global backlash. It has been 30 years since Beijing and 10 years of the W20, but women are not where they need to be yet. We in the US are ourselves not immune to that backlash. And we feel strongly that South Africa is the right leader at the right time to push back and ensure that we build global solidarity for women to continue to pursue and achieve our equality and socioeconomic rights. Thank you very much.
We call her ASB, and as you can hear from that message, women in the US understand that no leadership will reverse the trajectory of women from the world that we've made. Can we have Virginia's message flighted?
I'm the other co-head of the U.S. delegation. With women's advancement threatened by forces that don't understand our contributions directly impact global prosperity, it's time for W20 to embrace advocacy, action, and implementation. To do that, South Africa has asked me to implement the Women Entrepreneurs Act initiative, We Act for short. This pilot will work on implementing entrepreneurial and finance recommendations from previous communiques, including cross-cutting issues like STEMpreneurship and AI, the care economy, green jobs, rural women and food sustainability, and angel investments in women's health. Notably, we'll also drive action on high-priority W20 issues, even if they've not appeared in a G20 Leaders Declaration. We'll start with the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Code, launched by WeFi and the World Bank in late 2023. 14 G20 countries have provided funding, but so far, Indonesia is the only G20 country among 28 country participants. Prior to launching the finance code, WeFi has benefited 399,000 women-owned businesses in 82 developing countries and facilitated $5.3 billion in funding since 2017. We want many G20 countries to also implement the code and build their financial ecosystems so millions of women's businesses can scale and create jobs in both developing and developed countries. We'll work with WeFi, the OECD, and the Financial Alliance for Women to make this happen. Going forward, we'll partner with universities, economists, international organizations, philanthropists, and strong women's business and advocacy organizations in W20's 19 countries and 2 unions, the European and African unions, to drive research, progress, and impact. I'll be meeting with W20 delegates at CSW in New York next month. And after CSW, we'll have Zoom calls with delegates who want to help implement We Act. Our mission is to create a more prosperous and sustainable world for women, our families, and society in the global South and North. We want your country to be part of this initiative. In the spirit of Ubuntu and Nelson Mandela, Africa, your time is now. Women, onward and upward, W20 sisters and Brother Etienne. God bless and forward for action.
Virginia, that was amazing. It really is time that the woman is able to access finance as a means of production to ensure that she finds a way to remove the cat from the Zico. That's what we call an African rendition. I'd like to just say, in the heart of Ngushwa, there is a sea. And it is time that the woman in that space is able to benefit from the oceans economy. Without further ado, we have a message of support from Oceans 20. Over to you, my sister.
Good afternoon, Deputy Minister, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, all protocols observed. My name is Nicole du Plessis, and I'm honored to address you today as a representative of the National Research Foundation's South African Environmental Observation Network and the Ocean 20 engagement group under the G20 framework On behalf of Ocean20, I am delighted to extend our unwavering support to the Women20 and the vital work you are doing to advance gender equality and women's empowerment across all sectors, including the blue economy. The oceans are the lifeblood of our planet. They regulate our climate, provide food and livelihoods for billions, and are a source of immense economic potential. Yet the health of our oceans is under threat from climate change, overexploitation, and pollution. As we face these challenges, we must recognize the critical role women play in protecting and sustaining our oceans. Women are often at the forefront of ocean conservation, fisheries management, and coastal community resilience. They are scientists, educators, entrepreneurs, and caregivers, contributing invaluable knowledge and leadership to the sustainable use of ocean resources. However, the contributions of women in the ocean sector are frequently overlooked. Women face systemic barriers to accessing education, financing, and leadership roles, particularly in industries tied to the blue economy. This is not only a matter of gender inequality, but also a missed opportunity for innovation and progress. When women are empowered, entire communities thrive. Studies show that women reinvest about 90% of their income into their families and communities, creating a ripple effect of positive change. By ensuring women have equal access to opportunities in the blue economy, from maritime transport to marine and coastal conservation and tourism, we can unlock the transformative potential for both people and the planet. The Ocean20 is committed to fostering collaboration and innovation to address the challenges that were mentioned today. We stand with Women20 in your mission to champion gender-inclusive policies, amplify the voices of women, and ensure equitable access to education, resources, and leadership opportunities. As we look ahead to the ongoing G20 engagements, let us remember the challenges that we face. Climate change, ocean degradation, and gender inequality are interconnected. By working together, the Ocean20 and Women20 can drive meaningful progress towards a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable future. Let us continue to build bridges, share knowledge, and empower women to lead the way in safeguarding our ocean and our planet. Together, we can chart a course towards a future where both women and the ocean thrives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For Women20, we understand that the face of poverty is the black woman. And we understand that the face of poverty, if we don't change how we do things, will be the face of the black child. To ensure that that does not happen and we move through a trajectory that flights and empowers the girl child and the youth throughout Women20, we're pleased to have a message from Youth 20. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Sibulele, Program Director, former Deputy President of the Republic, Deputy Minister. Prof, you thought you were running away from me. I'm following you. It is with great pleasure to stand before you to provide a message of support for a fellow comrade and a fellow comrade. I met Nania sometimes last year for the first time in person, and we were in Moscow, no, St. Petersburg, and we were at the airport talking about Y20 and W20 and how we can collaborate. And I'm glad that this is becoming a reality today. Youth 20 is one of the oldest engagement groups with 15 years of in the space, while W20 is 10 years. But we have a lot to learn from W20 in terms of their continuation, in terms of their sustainable implementation and actionable items. And from Y20, we have not been able to even point one of the implementation or policy recommendations today. And with W20, they can be able to do that. And we hope that we can take that learning from them as young people. We are the oldest, but we look, the firstborn and the lastborn end up taking care of the firstborn. That is us. Our support is not only in theory. We actually working with the colleague here to provide 6 young women to support the working groups of W20. A few days ago, I had a discussion with a colleague from T20, and one of the thinking we had, Comrade Sibulela and Comrade Naya, is we have a joint statement around June from the key engagement groups that we've been engaging on, T20, W20, C20, Y20, B20, Oceans 20, Urban 20, that, leading to the next Sherpa meeting of the G20, we produced that joint statement with some of the key 1 or 2, 3 actionable and fundamental issues that we want the Sherpas to consider in the declaration. And this is something that we're going to push strongly from youth in terms of that support. Our aim here is to ensure that we mainstream youth in all spheres of life, including in all engagement groups, including in other G20 activities, that young people have got a voice and a platform in the table. I invite all young people that are in this room and online to join our expression of interest, which is currently out, to ensure that we've got mass participation of young people, that the ideas that the Youth 20 is going to come up with at the end of the process does not come from Raymond, but it comes from youth in the Global South in particular. We wish W20 the very best, and we are here to walk the journey with you and to learn from you. We look forward to more collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prare. Thank you so much, Prare. I think it's very proper to say that South Africa is also one of the BRICS countries, and BRICS women and BRICS youth is part of the work that we do together, and we hope that we will continue in that fashion. I'd like to ask Ms. Aletta Miller to come and share your offering with us, but I think it's proper to say that one of the strengths of Women20 is outreach. We will be going to outreach across the globe. We will be going through outreach through virtual sessions in the African continent and physical in-person sessions. And most importantly, we will be having outreach sessions throughout the provinces of South Africa. So the issue of language will be very, very important. We have 11 languages in South Africa. And with that said, as lingani ke mama. Mama umlambo ncuka azilingani mzali. At some point, we would like to ask you to bless us with coming on stage and sharing with us a message of support. How do we do this? It is only through the power of women who come before us that we will be able to do it. Please come to the stage and share with us. Kwenziwa njani? Ngoba siyakugeme ngoku siyakustivovo. We would really, really like to ask you, Mama, please come forward before you will have my sister come. Yes, please. Then she will.
Deputy Minister of the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. My former boss, my forever boss, Madam Phumzile, the former Vice President of the Republic of South Africa and the former Executive Director of UN Women. Feminist brothers, sisters and friends, I greet you. It's my honour to address you today at this pivotal moment in humanity's collective journey towards women's rights, empowerment and gender equality. On behalf of UN Women, I extend our solidarity to the delegation of the Women's 20 and to the organisers of this important launch, and to each of you in your commitment to advancing the rights and opportunities of women and girls worldwide through thick and through thin. Gender equality is a critical element for societal advancement and development, and the G20 have recognised this and have promoted the centrality of equality to human development and prosperity. In line with the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the G20 recognises that empowering women leads to substantial benefits socially, and economically. So, gender equality is good for women, it's good for girls, it's good for families, communities, and gender equality is good for men, for boys, for businesses, it's good for economies, for peace and harmony, peace and security. You get the picture. You've got to ask yourself, who wouldn't want this? Well, as you know, despite the gains, despite the irrefutable evidence of the benefit of women's rights, women's empowerment, and gender equality to all people across society, in 2025 we're facing a global tsunami, a huge wave of backlash against rights, against equality, against women and girls who are right at the centre, at the crosshairs of this battle. This backlash is not only a setback for women and for equality, it's also a threat to the broader goals of social and economic development and a threat to peace and prosperity. It's a threat to every single one of us. Now, in countries like Afghanistan, where I spent 4 years with UN Women before moving to South Africa in 2022, the already restricted rights of women and girls are being further restricted with devastating consequences for their education, employment, and freedom, and for the future of the Afghan nation. It's just one example. In other regions across the world, we see efforts to undermine gender equality through regressive policies and rhetoric. This global backlash requires a concerted response from all of us, wherever we are, and for us to come together globally. We must stand firm in our commitment to gender equality and work together to protect and advance the rights of women and girls. We cannot go back. Which brings us to our mandate in this room and online, where we're speaking here from Pretoria today, where the W20 is convened in the context of South Africa's presidency of the G20. Our time is now. Together, the Women's 20 can leverage the power of the G20, whose members represent 56% of the global population and 85% of global GDP, towards women's rights, women's empowerment, and gender equality. Now that is power. This year, we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Women's 20. From its early days, the Women's 20 has grown into a powerful voice. That's your voice, influencing the G20 agenda and ensuring that women's rights and gender equality remains at the forefront of global discussions. The Women's 20 10th anniversary now comes at a crucial moment in the quest for gender equality, women's rights, and women's empowerment. With the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. 30 years later, after Beijing, the Declaration remains the most comprehensive global policy framework for the rights of women. It recognises women's rights as human rights and sets out the roadmap for achieving equality between women and men. 30 years after Beijing, too little has changed. In Beijing and in a myriad of forums since, world leaders have pledged to end gender inequalities and to realise women and girls' rights. These commitments have not been fully met with action, with financing, or the implementation required to meet these goals. Too much talk, not enough real change. The patriarchy is strong, and as long as power is not truly shared, we will not realise true equality. I'm wrapping up now. Madam Moderator, it's just such an exciting forum because we really need to use this platform right now globally. So UN Women's committed to supporting the work of the Women's 20 South Africa, and we look forward to collaborating closely with all of you. By leveraging our global technical expertise, UN Women continue to support the G20 and the Women's 20 South Africa in driving meaningful progress towards rights, equality, and empowerment. Your dedication and your passion have paved the way for meaningful change, and we look forward to continuing the journey together, particularly during these difficult times. We stand together, and together we are strong. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Aletta Miller. It is a pleasure to invite Mama Mpumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, who is the ex-Deputy President of South Africa and was the UN Executive Director. Over to you, Mama, for your message of support on how it is that women from before have done it, continue to do it, and how you hand over the baton to the younger generation.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Deputy Minister. I just sneaked in. I didn't expect to be on the stage, but I'm glad that I've had an opportunity just to see how wonderful the preparations are going. I think it's exciting to see so many women who have turned up for this event. It's also exciting that South Africa has the presidency of G20 this year in 2025, when it is the 30th year of marking the Beijing, signing of the Beijing Declaration. In Beijing, we adopted as the world for the first time a comprehensive program for women's progress, women's emancipation, women's development. In Beijing, there were many countries who had never bothered to care about women. In fact, in many countries, there were laws about children, laws about dogs, laws about agriculture, but nothing about women. So it was a turning point. 30 years later, what have we done? We have seen some progress, that's for sure, but we are nowhere where we're supposed to be. And in addition, there's pushback against the rights that the women have already achieved. So, Beijing 30, G20, South Africa, hell no. This has to be your time to make sure that you put on the agenda something that will be as significant as what Beijing was to women, something that will carry us through for the next 30 years and more, making sure that we change the lives of women and girls. Before Beijing, there was nothing about a girl child. It was the African women in Beijing who emphasized the fact that it's not just being a child, but it's being a girl child that is most difficult, because she's the only one who is married to an older man. She's the only one who's malnourished because she's denied food. She's the only one who has no access to education just because she's a girl. Let us make sure that in the themes that we've identify something and things that you can put your foot on, and make sure that you do it for the many other women of the world, because this is just 20 countries. The world is much larger than 20, but we trust you. I'm sure you can make a difference for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we've come to the keynote address, and it is a pleasure to introduce Deputy Minister in the Presidency for Ministry of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disability, the Honorable Mapaseka Stivovo Steve Litsile. Steve is a human rights advocate and founder of Access Chapter 2, and she's a prominent leader with high levels of international policy and human rights experiences. She is indeed one of those leaders in the African continent that continues to lead from the front for those communities that are marginalized and continues to execute, formulate, evaluate, and implement policies that will drive forth the agenda of women and those who are vulnerable groups. Over to you, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you so much, Program Director. Let me really send greetings to you also as a co-chair of W20SA. Let me appreciate Her Excellency, former Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, also the former Executive Director of UN Women, Her Excellency Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, Mama Siyabulela. Greetings to Prof. Nanya, who's the co-chair and head of delegation. We really do appreciate the work that you both are involved in directing, collecting all of us, bringing all of us together. And here we are here.
Yes.
I want to briefly appreciate Dr. Musia, the Managing Director at the National Research Foundation. I want to also appreciate Prof. Mamoetsa, CEO of the Human Science Research Council, Ms. Aletta Miller, representative of the United Nations Women, the South African Multi-Country Office, yourself and your team. And I do know that the UN family is here. I know UNAIDS is here as well somewhere, who also are part of the UN family. Representative of other G20 engagement groups present here, distinguished guests of G20 countries and G20 community. I really want to say thank you for this launch. Dumelang, Abusheni, good afternoon, and greetings to you all. And we are having this launch from the sunny Pretoria, South Africa, and those who are online, we want to also recognize the fact that it might not be afternoon, it might be morning or evening, so that we are not biased to the zone that you are in from all corners of the world. I must express my immense appreciation for this opportunity to address the launch of W20 with South Africa as the host country. This launch takes place in the year of 10th anniversary since the first working meeting of Women20 that took place in Istanbul under the Turkish G20 presidency in October 2015. I did not even mention this, that I was there in Istanbul. So I celebrate this moment that here we are in South Africa and we are hosting this moment. This is where the journey began for demands and measures to be formulated to promote the economic participation of women in the G20 member states and to strengthen women's economic power and the cause for our meaningful participation in all areas of human endeavor. This occasion is more momentous as the G20 is taking place for the first time on the African soil, an opportunity we may not get in the next 20 years. This moment is not just for South Africa, it's a moment for Africa. So, Program Director, women's issues have been a part of G20 for about 13 years, when in 2012, under the Mexican presidency, the Los Cabos G20 leaders' declaration agreed to, and I quote, take concrete actions to overcome the barriers hindering women's full economic and social participation and to expand economic opportunities for women in G20 economies, close quote. The G20 leaders also agreed, and I want to set another message in that very same year, to set a key principles to improve the quality of women's employment, close quote. This was followed in 2014 under the Australian presidency by the Brisbane Leaders' Declaration in that Brisbane summit, where for the first time G20 member state assumed a specific goal towards gender equality in the workplace, known as the Brisbane Commitment, or Goal 25 by 25. The summit committed to reducing the gender gap in labor force participation with 25% by 2025. Here we are, 2025. We have to assess, are we at that 25 or we've surpassed that mark? This will bring 100 million women into labor force, and that was the commitment on increasing economic growth and reducing poverty. Program Director, when the W20 was launched under the Turkish presidency in 2015 as an engagement group, we must recall that this forum was created with an objective to advance and ensure gender-inclusive economic growth within the structure of G20. For the past 10 years, the W20 has been a group of dedicated volunteers from civil society, business, and academic across G20 who work towards mainstreaming gender equality and women's economic empowerment within and between G20 member states. This was and continues to remain a very critical engagement in the process of advocating for the women's agenda within G20. Women20 task groups must work together during the year under the guidance of the presidency to make evidence-based policy recommendations towards improving the lives of women and girls in all their diversities. When the ideation of a working group for women's empowerment was put forward under the Indian presidency in 2023 and adopted by G20 leaders at their New Delhi summit, it was successfully executed in 2024 under the Brazilian presidency. W20 therefore works alongside the working groups for women's empowerment to amplify the voices of the vulnerable and marginalized. I hope we can utilize these important meetings of the W20 to reflect on how far we have come in achieving these and other targets amongst G20 countries, particularly as we advance the cause of gender equality and the economic inclusion of women in their diversities. Our efforts to ensure inclusion and gender equality in G20 member states are directly linked to our developmental prospect of humanity, noting that G20 accounts for a majority stake of the world's economy, and we cannot have women sitting at the periphery of the economy and all other aspects of development. Program Director, as a Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, we are hosting the Working Group for Women's Empowerment under South Africa's presidency. As we know, we are led by our President, His Excellency Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, who is a champion of gender equality. So we are not going to get tired to focus and to remain focused. This working group effectively takes women's issues beyond just an engagement group level to that of a ministerial level. We are happy to announce that the first technical meeting of the working group was successfully hosted on the 17th and 18th February, and all G20 members and 5 guest countries were present in that meeting. We also had the most of the international partners who participated over the 2-day meeting. We have planned a series of technical working group meetings throughout this year to be culminated in a ministerial meeting scheduled for 24th October, just before the Leaders' Summit in November. Distinguished participants, South Africa has presented its issue paper at the first meeting, outlining its 3 overarching priorities for Women's Working Group, namely policy perspectives for the care economy, both paid and unpaid, care work, and household responsibilities. The second area is a total financial inclusion of and for women, and with women in it. Lastly, is focusing on gender-based violence and femicide, as we all know what we are battling with in terms of gender-based violence and femicide. These 3 priorities are amongst the 7 that the W20 will be focusing on for 2025, demonstrating how critical it is for policy perspective on these priorities within the G20 community to advance women's empowerment and gender equality. The major difference between what the W20 and the Working Group for Women's Empowerment can achieve is that within W20 community you can freely discuss and debate issues and emerge with forward-looking suggestions, including of contentious issues as well. But we must be free to discuss everywhere, particularly in our own spaces. What we know, at our level, we always go for negotiations at technical and ministerial levels. But a solid government position policy perspective can take into the consideration what leaders' declaration must entail. This means they are implementable things that we are going to be discussing, as our former Deputy President mentioned. We must be realistic, we must be practical, but we must apply agency in our work. But when we focus on implementable interventions, let's not forget to cost it. Put human, technical, and financial resources behind it. We are given to understand that W20 communique is released every year at your summit, and this year the summit will be hosted in October. What that demonstrates is that the emergence of that summit can be included, or the issues that come from there can be included with the ministerial outcome document that can be taken forward to the leaders' declaration. But we must also manage our own expectations and be realistic around them. It is just unfortunate, Program Director, that the first working group held in Brazil emerged with only a chair's summary, meaning that there was no consensus reached on the ministerial outcome. It was blocked by one country. South Africa does not intend for this to happen again, as it will be the last opportunity over a very long period for the Global South, G20 country, to have a ministerial outcome, and we will do everything to achieve this in 2025. In this regard, we are counting on you within the W20 to ensure that you lobby your technical experts on those issues that are contentious and which can break down consensus. Through solidarity, we seek to achieve a people-centered, developmental-oriented, and inclusive future. By promoting equality, we seek to ensure fair treatment, opportunities, and progress for all people and nations, regardless of their economic status, gender, race, sexual orientation, geographic location, and other characteristics. Inclusive sustainability is about meeting the needs of present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own. By strengthening and reforming multilateral mechanisms and institutions, and also by deepening international economic cooperation, we can indeed realize a better world free from the twin scourges of inequality and underdevelopment. It is within these priorities that South Africa's chairship of the Working Group for Economic Empowerment is located, placing issues of women's inclusive economic growth, human rights, equality, safety, and dignity at the center of our approach, which are the same with W20. It is also significant that as South Africa assumes its G20 chairship of the Working Group for Empowerment of Women, it does so within just a few weeks after when the world marked the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the Beijing Platform, the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action during United Nations 4th World Conference on Women, held in 1995 in Beijing, China. It is indeed a significant moment for the G20 as the world undertakes a global review of the implementation of Beijing Platform for Action in March 2025. The Beijing Platform for Action continues to serve as a global blueprint for the advancement, development, and empowerment of women. Furthermore, South Africa's chairship of the Working Group is also taking place when the world marks 10 years of striving towards commitment made in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, adopted globally in 2015, as well as the attainment on targets contained in the 17 SDGs, especially SDG 5 on women's empowerment and gender equality. The year 2025 marks a critical period in this regard, with only 5 years remaining to reach the 2030 target. Under the South African chairship, the Working Group for the Empowerment of Women will be expected to champion acceleration of SDG 5 within G20 community. We believe the same will be done at the W20 level. Program Director, the first G20 technical meeting hosted by South Africa demonstrated a shared global will and solidarity towards establishing a women equitable, representative, and fit-for-purpose international order in support of the main multilateral process under the United Nations. There are high expectations that South Africa will lead a progressive, people-centered, developmental-oriented, and solution-oriented presidency in a fractured global geopolitical context, when we know there's anti-rights, anti-gender movements that are rising. So we must be mindful and alive to the circumstances that we find ourselves. But until we hand over the presidency to United States on the 1st of December 2025, we will continue to champion equality. What I have witnessed over the last 2 days demonstrated that this indeed is very much possible. For G20 to make a meaningful contribution in addressing the polycrisis confronting the world, the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability adopted for 2025 presidency is very much significant, and women have been talking everywhere. These themes reflect South Africa's intention to build on the effort and success of the last 3 G20 presidency. It is also critical to note that South Africa embarks on the chairship of this working group and W20. It does do within difficult time and the pushbacks, as I've mentioned earlier. So endeavoring to reach consensus within G20, we remain with the heart of the issue at the center of the agenda. And part of it, resisting around the language use of gender, sexual and reproductive health and rights, women in all their diversity, sexual orientation and gender identity are constantly languages that are receiving pushback. Our identities, our intersectionalities are not for negotiation. Program Director, distinguished participants, as I conclude, I want to reiterate that South Africa remains committed to a steadfast on the imperatives and principles contained in the Constitution of our country. And we continue to stand resolute on matters of a truly non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic society. Gender equality not only encompasses the right and access to opportunities, but also the notion that women's rights are human rights, and that women should be respected for who they are. I can only assure you that we are ready. The same spirit and forces of readiness like the 20,000 women that marched in 1956. They marched to Union Building, few kilometers from where we are. But we also carry the same spirit and force of the 17,000 women in the 4th World Conference in Beijing platform of action. We are ready as women. We will not negotiate, but claim the rightful, or what is rightfully ours, our space, our homes, our work, our benefit, and our seat on the table. The translation of rights is intended to lead to the transformation of the lives and livelihoods in all socioeconomic sectors, not specific sectors, all socioeconomic sectors, for all women and girls in their diversities. We must achieve the substantive equality for them. We must achieve it for us, all around the world, including women in the G20. So I want to say W20 is not just a G20 event. It's a global gathering of incredible women who strive for emancipation of women. So, distinguished guests, we shall not fail as a generation of women in all our diversities. We need to ensure that a total advancement of women, meaningful inclusion and participation in G20 agenda is achieved. I wish you all the best in the task, and most importantly, this must make South Africa, Africa, and the world a better place for all women in their diversities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Deputy Minister, for that rendition. And indeed, as we strive to ensure that we contribute to the betterment of all women from all walks of life, we will seek to manage expectations, we will contribute to the realization of the SDGs, and we will ensure, as we mobilize technical resources, human resources, and financial resources, we'll tap into women in business, women from grassroots, and women in leadership, and unearth the hidden capacities of women from across the globe. We, as Women20 South Africa, are blessed to have a very vibrant, very youthful, very experienced team of delegates. And I'd like to introduce one of our delegates, Dorothy, to come please have a panel with us where we're going to be having a very meaty and wealthy discussion. And we will close the session by introducing who this amazing team of delegates is. Over to you, Dorothy.
Please, may I request the panelists to join me on here? I want to continue in the spirit of invoking spirits of our foremothers and our forefathers by invoking the spirit of our foremother, Professor Ama Ata Aido, the incredible the late Ghanaian great author and feminist, who writes in her play Anoa, "The best way to sharpen a knife is not to whet it on one side only, and neither can you solve a riddle by considering only one end of it." In the spirit, W20 is called to continue considering all different perspectives to drive the change we seek to see and we want to be. I wish to welcome our panelists who are going to give us different perspectives, inspired by our keynote address. Ms. Yolanda Andrag, Chief Operations Officer, Agri South Africa. Dr. Wessel van der Berg, Senior Advocacy Officer, Equimondo. Ms. Zainab Kanbai, Special Advisor to the W20 Head of Delegation on Women in Business. We start with you, Ms. Andrag.
Good afternoon, everyone. Former President, Deputy Minister. I didn't expect to stand and talk. I was thinking we're going to have a vibrant discussion amongst ourselves over there. But firstly, thank you for the opportunity. It's a privilege to be here as a woman, firstly. And secondly, to represent the agricultural industry of South Africa. I think there's been various mention today of the role that rural people and specifically rural women play. And there's been mention of past injustices in South Africa. And I think if you think of the South African agricultural industry, we are a microcosm of the challenges that you experience at large in South Africa. And on a gender level, I think the most intense challenges in South Africa is faced by rural women, often in agriculture. So from our side, I think I want to start off by, Dorothy, by telling a story. At the most recent COP29 climate negotiations, around the table there was 190 people. And every time on the late minutes or the last night, there was a deadlock. A woman from a developing country or from the global south raised their hands to offer words to build bridges between nations that got stuck on agreements. And I think that is something that stands out from a South African perspective as well, and we often take it for granted. I don't think there's a more fitting year for us as South Africans to chair the G20, just because we have such a painful past. I think that gives us this year to actually take on the purpose of fulfilling a leadership role on a global level. In South Africa, we have a word called Ubuntu, and the global colleagues can Google it. It means I'm a person because you are. And I think in South Africa, we have the vocabulary of Ubuntu as part of our social fiber. And as women in South Africa, I think we are blessed with even more vocabulary than men at times. And from a leadership perspective and going and looking at the year ahead, I truly believe that this platform can play a role in building bridges. Not just in our own country and taking the cause of women forward, but on a multilateral level where we face so much backlash against women's rights, against the multilateral institutions that played a pivotal role in making progress globally. So from an agricultural perspective, I think as a country we have made progress when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to women representation in terms of land ownership, in terms of employment and the type of opportunities that women enjoy. Are we there yet? By no means. I think any one of us that takes a drive regularly through rural South Africa know that you are deeply unsettled by the state of what you see. And I think I could speak on behalf of the broader African agricultural community when we say women still have a long way to go. And it's forums such as these where we as leaders need to play a role in building those bridges and not shying away from hard conversations. In South Africa, we're used to having hard conversations. And that's why I believe this year is the ideal year for us to actually play a leadership role on a global level because we can build bridges. It's become part of who we are as a nation. And I would want to say it's almost like the silhouette of our civic body as a nation has become, you know, the ability to actually continue finding connection amid backlash.
Is this working? Thank you for the microphone, Dorothy, and the ability to remain seated. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Yolanda, for those words. Deputy Minister, the previous Director of UN Women, all protocol observed. I was very moved, Honourable Deputy Minister, by the 2 points that I read from what you said. The first one is that this is exactly the moment when we cannot get the opportunity for consensus pass us by. I think ministerial outcomes cannot be neglected in the negotiations. And then secondly, that identities and intersectionalities are clearly not up for negotiation. Thank you for saying that message on a global stage. I would hope that in those negotiations, there's an opportunity to negotiate for the value of care and caregiving, as you are with the care economy. But not only care as defined by the economy, but care defined for the virtue of care itself. There is a very deep link between democracy and care. I'm discovering this with my 2 young children. My son is 8 and my daughter is 12. And they're teaching me what democracy means. But in addition to the personal level, at a political level, democracy should be about the assigning of caring responsibilities. Who is responsible for care? What is the money for? The money is for caring for us, for food, for shelter, for human interaction. I have one point of data to share from the State of the World's Fathers report. And Nomphumzile was at the launch of the first report and wrote the foreword for the first report in 2015. And I want to really take the words that you shared at Vancouver to heart, which is that when we think about men's contribution to caregiving, we should not praise a fish for swimming. Care is natural, care is human, it is natural for men to play as much a caregiving role as others. However, our economy seems to counter that, our economy and society. So one data point from the global report, which by the way was done in most of the G20 countries, the State of the World's Fathers report. Men and women both want to care, but they're facing different barriers. A local data point in South Africa is that the co-residence of children with their fathers is at the lowest that it's ever been. It's at 35%. So 65% of children do not live with their biological fathers. But what was surprising, and I'll wrap up with that, is that the children are living with uncles, grandfathers, mothers, and partners. In the spirit of extended household families, of Ubuntu, as you mentioned, how can we contribute to care in that context? I think negotiations like the G20, consensus on agreements around parental leave, around subsidized ECD, and around gender transformative social protection would move us in the right direction.
Thank you, Your Excellencies, and everybody who has taken the time to be here with us today. Are we at a point of change? Yes. Are we at a point of tremendous opportunity? Yes, thank you, Dorothy. Yes, and I believe that's why we're all here. We're optimistic, perhaps cautiously optimistic, but we do see opportunity. For Africa, this is the right time to turn to or return to our own values and ask ourselves what we want to do with our own resources. How do we want to Thank you. How do we want to ambitiously boost our $2.8 trillion economy, well, GDP, which is the second lowest globally, in spite of having the highest access to arable land, the greatest quantity of natural resources and minerals, and the largest potential for future employment? And how do we want to define or redefine our future? What the world needs now, responding to the wise words of both of our excellencies, are visionaries and intelligent implementers of a more inclusive future, which elevates everybody, the collective. And it strengthens the platforms for wisdom sharing and knowledge sharing across countries, across cultures, and across continents. Progress happens through collaboration. And this year, in my role as Special Advisor on Africa and Women in Business to our head of delegation, in case you're wondering about my accent or anything else, I am Kenyan, and I flew in for today's launch. South Africa always gives me tremendous learnings, and it always makes me emotional to be here. But what we are actively doing is engaging private sector to participate visibly, impactfully, and meaningfully to women's economic empowerment through the W20 platform. Why? Because once again, Africa has the largest percentage of female entrepreneurs on the planet, sitting at 24%. Private sector drives the economy, employing 90% of the global workforce and 70% in South Africa alone. So they become, for us, key strategists and implementers on gender inclusive policy. But not only that, with private sector, we have the opportunity to take it one step further and look at transitioning from inclusion to full integration, which is the end objective of inclusion. So there are companies within our midst, like NRF and HSRC, and including others like Naspers and Standard Bank in South Africa, and in my own country, Safaricom and Equity Bank. And I will mention my own company as well, who are looking at women as part of the bottom line. Women's success and supporting women's success as part of the bottom line. So we've heard it, more women with more money means more people with more money. More economically empowered women in positions of leadership means more prosperity for everybody. The data supports this, and every W20 communique for the past 10 years has highlighted this as a recommendation.
I wish to thank our panelists for sharing different perspectives. What we are hearing is how important it is to center women in agriculture, but not just women, rural women. What we are hearing is how important to think about care, not just from a practical perspective, but also ideologically, and positioning the role of men in the care economy as we have our conversations. What we're hearing is the value and the importance of the private sector as a key role player as we think about financial inclusion for and with women from this panel. We would have loved to have much more time to unpack and to hear more about the intersections that everyone else in the room has. But as a way of winding down our conversation here, I want to ask each of the panel members to talk to us from your perspective and the things that you have shared with us. What do you think W20 needs to do differently? And what I want us to center is this pushback, this question that we have heard the whole time. We are in a moment of a gift, a crisis that has given us a gift. What is the gift that W20 needs to offer the world in 2025 in South Africa's presidency? I will start with you, Yolanda.
Thanks, Dorothy. I think from a South African perspective, what I would like to see is that we take a lead in the global realignment of the multilateral institutions and the institutions that advocate for women on a global level. We should actively not just talk to each other, but we should start doing things. Earlier, there was reference to the work of We Act. An example such as that is the things that we should focus on, not just as South Africa, but as a global community. This is a time when we should build bridges and just ground ourselves in our common humanity. And that is something that I believe South Africa and under the Women20 can play a leading role in. But we really need to get practical in the policy positions that we put forward in how we mobilize the private sector specifically to tackle solutions.
So has everybody here today understood who W20 is and what we do? So we're going to keep going. In spite of geopolitical crises or whatever it is that we want to call it, we're going to keep going. And we've heard from leaders why South Africa is best positioned to lead this conversation globally. And I'll tell you my opinion. And it's out of having spent time in South Africa during the COVID-19 pandemic, where our company chose this country as the place to contribute community service. And there were two signs which I saw, which changed my perspective on life, simple signs which I have applied in my life since then. The first was arriving hungry at a vegan restaurant, and hungry vegans are no fun. And the sign read, "Good food takes time." So we have the right attitude here. The second was emerging out of a forest where we had lost our way, almost out of fuel. And we come onto a main road finally and turn left, and there's a bus in front of us. And the signboard reads, "Sponsored by Jesus." Our job is to do the next right thing. The rest is sponsored by Jesus.
Thank you so much for the question, Dorothy. I think if we can help the fish to swim, that would be good, to get men more involved in care. And I do think there are policy solutions to that. But there's also the recognition that male political leaders should not delegate decisions about social welfare to female politicians, but that care is about all of the departments. So that's the first one. And then secondly, just to double down on care as a counterweight to what we're seeing happening in the world.
So we should help the fish to swim. We should keep going, keep continuing, and certainly double down on our engagement in this powerful multilateral system that enables us to have these kinds of conversations. I want to end this panel by encouraging each of us as we engage in W20 activities this year to embody a specific spirit and a way of being. It is inspired by the work of Mina Salami, an amazing, incredible feminist thought leader from our continent with Nigerian and Finnish roots. In her book, Sensuous Knowledge, she asks us to embody poetry, to embody playfulness, eros, borderlessness, conscientiousness, dialogue, intuition, soulfulness, stillness, warmth, passion, beauty, compassion, mystery, wisdom, honesty, femininity, interiority, sensuousness, and emotional intelligence. Because these are the tools that patriarchy, capitalism, and Euro-patriarchal knowledge does not embody. And we are called to do that as W20. I want to thank my panelists, and I want to hand over back to Dr. Mchunu from the HSRC for our next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dorothy. Former Deputy President, Mem Pamzila Mlambonduga, Deputy Minister, Ms. Mapaseka Steve Liteki, HSOC CEO, Prof. Sarah Mosweta, and Prof. Nanya Paula Muller, all protocol observed. I have the honor of reading out the names of all our Women20 delegates. So if you could please have their names on the screen, and my humble request will be I read their names out and we'll give them a round of applause at the end. Thank you. So first up, we've got Dr. Dorothy Ngila. We've also got Dr. Zeynep Esek, also from the Human Sciences Research Council. We also have Dr. Lorenza Flux. We've got Ms. Vonani Ricordo. We've got Dr. Otilile Ayodele, a colleague of ours at HSRC as well. We've also got Dr. Rachel Adams. We've also got Ms. Zanele Mabaso. We've also got economist extraordinaire Dr. Ntabiseng Moleko. We've also got Ms. Victoria Duncan. We also have Professor Ruth Hall. We've also got Dr. Leslie Ann Foster. We've got another former HSRC colleague, Dr. Funeka Yazini April. We've also got one of our panelists, Ms. Zaina Kanbai. Then we've also got Dr. Dane Isaacs, another HSRC colleague. We also have the chair, Prof. Nanya Paula Muller, and Ms. Sibulele Poswayo, who's the co-chair as well. With that, I'd like to thank you all.
Thank you very much, Napeli, for introducing our very youthful delegates, South African delegates. And we'd like to thank, before we give thanks, we'd like to announce that we have more than 500 participants on our virtual platforms. And in person, it's a big group, for those that can't see, of about 200 participants. This is indeed an amazing time for Africa, an amazing time for South Africa. And on the platform, we have colleagues from C20, we have other formations, and in person, we still have colleagues from T20, we have colleagues that are here also from Business 20, and we'd like to acknowledge your presence and continue to work together. Now, for closing remarks, we'd like to welcome the chairperson of the Inequality Movement, Ms. Pelisa Ngomo.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much for such a beautiful day. And I know that I stand between this meeting and snacks and even hitting the road, avoiding the traffic. I mean, just to say that, you know, along the lines of the sentiments of everybody else, that South Africa, who is the first country in Africa to host the G20, it will only come back in 20 years. And we're hosting it on the back of a raging civil war in DRC. May I just ask for a moment of stand-up solidarity consistent with the theme of South Africa, that is solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Solidarity with women of DRC and children who are displaced as a result of internal civil war and as well as mismanagement of extractive industries within the DRC. Thank you very much. You may be seated. So as I do my remarks as a chair of Inequality Movement, I'm a development economist, and as well I do social justice work in communities in Africa and globally. So I just want to say that today's event really marks, you know, an important day, that it weaves together interests of women across the globe, in particular in South Africa, in Africa, and as well as in the global south. And it triggers two important thematic areas that the South African government has chosen, which is around solidarity and sustainability and equality. And I think part of weaving is truly about, it's the moment for us to reflect that in the 10 years of journey that we've walked in as women, what is it that we've actually done? W20 is also an extension of the work that was started in Beijing. We stand in the shoulders of women who crafted the global vision. And the speaker, after every speaker, has bemoaned the fact that economic and social position of women in the world and Africa has actually not changed substantially. The strength of patriarchal system has also exacerbated economic exclusion, food insecurity, political instability, and civil war. But one of the key things that is also coming out quite strong, there's a very clear call to action after today. That firstly, that the G20 must center women's rights, that it must drive meaningful transformation, it must amplify women's voices across, but also as well as address intersecting barriers. The Women20 streams as well creates an opportunity for us to assess progress that we've made between Beijing and today. Ground the intersectional nature of gender equality, close gaps, strengthen our policy propositions through evidence-based policy proposal. In fact, the partnership between HSRC as a knowledge partner and W20 is such a strategic moment for us to make it sure that we strengthen the policy proposal, but also ensure that we intensify our advocacy work within our own governments, but in partnership as well with civil society organizations, but fundamentally ensures that we eradicate inequality. Lastly, South Africa's G20 must achieve restructuring of global financial architecture that serves the global South citizens, in particularly women. It must develop gender transformative macroeconomic policies that ensures gender budgeting, addresses economic exclusion of women, industrialization that drives development and benefits African citizens and citizens of global South. We will do what we can. The rest will be sponsored by Jesus. Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues, for being with us. We are women from the Eastern Cape. Nania is from Ngobo in the Eastern Cape. Her ancestral home is in Goba. We're women of Africa. I am from Ngoshwa. I'm a woman of Africa. And indeed, we will deliver a Women20 that will be inclusive. I hand over to you, head of delegation, my leader, my sister, my friend. Thank you. It has been beautiful.
Thank you, Sibu, for that. Yeah, we both come from the Eastern Cape, best place in the world. We have run out of time, but I really want to say thank you to the National Research Foundation for hosting us here. I also want to thank the wonderful logistics and events teams from both the National Research Foundation and the Human Sciences Research Council. You did a magnificent job. Thank you very much. We also have tokens of appreciation. I don't know if we should have people come up or we can just... Okay, so our excellencies who are present here, we would like to present you with a gift. You can, if it's fine, you could both come up. Oh. We deeply appreciate your presence. We understand how busy you are, and thank you for your inspiring deliveries today. We are so happy to have had you here. Thank you very much. And And then to our rather marvelous panelists, we would also like to present the three of you with gifts. We deeply appreciate your presence, excuse me, and the ideas that you shared with us today. Okay, thank you very much to Yolanda, to Vessel, and to Zaina. Again, these are tokens of our appreciation, very small ones, because of course we're cash-strapped. But thank you. Okay, for those of you online, sorry we went over time, we really tried. For those of you who are here, you're going to be treated and thanked with some food outside.